Hi, I'm Wesley with TreeNewal. I'm here with Ron Schmidt from the town of Argyle, and we're talking about education and sustainability of trees and kind of how that works with your town and other municipalities. And it's an important thing that we educate not only the residents but the developers and the businesses that are in the town.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Prior to 2017, we really didn't have much, not only information, but emphasis on trying to protect our tree canopy in Argyle. So, one of the things we initially did was create an ad hoc committee, a tree committee, which led ultimately revising some of our ordinances. So we had essentially the legal backing that, the town was considering trees as a very important resource. Since then, essentially, we have been identified as Tree City USA. We have implemented Arbor Day, at which time we actually give away some trees, which we're trying to improve on. We actually have some ideas on how we can take some of the tree reforestation fund and award trees to residents and folks that want to adopt a tree. A lot of education comes along with it. Not only just adopting a tree, just like you would any puppy or something like that, but you have to take care for it. You have to plant it properly, which most people do wrong, right? We all know that. They're planted too deep. And then the irrigation, the upkeep, all that has to be educated. And we appreciate everything that y'all have done for us, as you did recently at a town hall meeting.
Yeah, there's a little more to it than dig a hole and drop it in, and it can seem daunting to people when they've planted a tree and it had died and then they've replaced it. And the way you help them feel more comfortable and enjoy success is through education.
Absolutely. Yeah, planting a tree, there's a process in itself, and it's more than handing out a pamphlet, for example. But educating them, and just think about it, we have just now accepted that we're over 5,600 population. That is still a lot of people that you have to educate. And most people are not aware about how to plant a tree. They buy a new house, the trees have been planted for them, and we found out recently that some of them did not survive the freeze. And we have to educate them if they want to replace it, how to replace it, and then how to take care of it. Even some of the existing trees, though, we have a lot of post oaks, can benefit from some maintenance.
Yes.
To keep them healthy. So it doesn't have to be just a strictly survival kind of a thing. Post oaks, as you know, I mean, they don't show their age, not like we do, right? They can be 12 inches in caliper and be 100 plus years old. But we have a lot of post oaks in our community. It's prevalent. It's probably the largest species that we have. And we have, 31% coverage in our community. They happen to be all clumped, which is for natural reasons. They protect each other. But even then, I think there is benefit to taking care of some of those trees and educating people and making it fun for people, right? I mean, not too many people rush out on Saturday and like, oh, I want to learn about trees. Usually they want to learn about trees when they want to plant a tree. But trees take a long time to take care of, to plant and see, do well.
So what can municipalities and other organizations do, and how can they use tree education to encourage sustainable practices?
Well, I think, our small community, we have to rely on third party for a lot of it. We don't have a resident arborist. We just, don't have the resources for that. We're blessed with the fact that you guys are right down the street from us in town of Argyle, and can, educate and be a participant, perhaps even lead that charge of educating our citizens. We also have some master gardeners that have, volunteered. So I think in conjunction with them, we can make it a fun process. We have Arbor Day, as like I mentioned before. So we essentially can set aside certain days of the year that make sense to go ahead and focus on trees, how to plant trees, how to take care of trees, and then go beyond even that. What is the real value of trees? Why should we plant trees? Which goes beyond the aesthetic part. I mean, it's part of the ecosystem. It protects our topsoils. It provides shelter for wildlife. And so, Argyle is blessed with a lot of trees, but we have to be careful that we don't take the path that some other towns have taken, and then before we know it, we don't have any trees left.
Right. Well, TreeNewal's happy to partner with the town of Argyle. We call Argyle home. We're proud of that, and we're more than willing to come out and educate. It's one of my favorite things to do. I get a lot of things I really do love about my job. One of my favorite things is just talking to people about trees, just having a conversation and answering their questions, and I really do enjoy that. And so I'd be happy to take opportunities to work on behalf of the town of Argyle to educate your residents, because once they've purchased property and they own it, it's kind of up to them to take care of the trees.
Yes, and reflecting back on the last presentation you all gave, I mean, it was amazing to see the citizen engagement. I wish I had that kind of engagement from a council standpoint. They don't always want to hear about politics or government, but I was really impressed by it, because I think you made it not only an educational but interesting presentation, and that grows, right? There's not only good feedback, but it's also citizens sharing it with other citizens, and we'll get a larger group and a larger group, and it'll continue to grow. And the Arbor Day that we have now will continue to grow and become maybe a festival one of these days that we celebrate our trees. That would be wonderful to do so.
Okay. So from your role of working with the community, what are some of the challenges associated with tree education?
Well, I think sometimes trees are seen as an impasse to evolution. By evolution, I mean to development, for example. And I don't think that that's the case. I think education, both from a citizen standpoint, from a governmental standpoint, and also from a development standpoint, is important. You have to essentially get all three together. And we have made it very clear to developers that trees are important to us, and we want to work with them. We don't want to stop the development. We do want amenities in our town, and so sometimes we have to think outside the box on how we're going to do this. And I think there's been some success stories there. From what I've seen, for example, developers taking greater care in protecting our post oaks, which, if you look at them in the wrong way, makes them unhappy. But by protecting, by screening, staying away from their root system, and just making it part of their development, taking these majestic trees and seeing that they are part of the development, just like any other aesthetic value that they're trying to do with their building, for example.
Well, with careful planning, you can even build around post oaks if you're careful, and you got to make some allocations for them to be able to assure that they're not impacted too negatively, because they are sensitive, like you mentioned, and without that proper planning and without some regulation and guidelines, they're usually the first ones to become sick or injured after a construction property, but they're probably the least replaceable arborilogical resource that you have in the town of Argyle.
Well, we incentivize developers to protect trees. The more they save, the better it is for them. And the other thing that we've also included in our tree ordinance is that they have to preserve these trees for 2 years, not just 1 year. So whether new trees that are being planted or existing trees, they have to at least survive for 2 years, which is a good indication that they're probably going to survive beyond it. But we've seen too many times in other communities where a developer comes in, either plants new trees or says they're going to protect existing trees, and then the next season you can start seeing their downward spiral. So 2 years is probably reasonable, and I think that was one of the success stories.
Yeah, well, I think if you tried to push it out more than 2 years, you probably get some pushback, and might be counterproductive.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to work hand in hand with developers. I think they see it as reasonable, and having actually arborists coming out, working with them. So when someone wants to develop, for example, a property, every one of the trees is identified, and we indicate which ones are perhaps sick that could be beneficial to be removed, not only to avoid any evolution on that property, but also to allow the other trees to become more healthy too. So I think, yeah, we've made some headway there. I believe so. And, you know, the education part, we just need to continue. And I think most of the citizens have embraced that trees are important to us, the value of trees. And so they want to protect them.
Yeah, well, you were referring to tree inventories that the city now requires for development, and that is to help the city keep track of what trees are on site and which trees are being removed for the development and which ones are to remain. And that helps encourage the contractors and the developers to maintain as many as they can. And it's actually a very valuable management tool for afterwards. For being able to know what your condition of your trees are, what your species, what do you have out there, and then you can manage based on that.
I think there's a certain trend in the industry, if you will, to protect trees. Other communities are starting to take notice that you have to protect trees. And I think, in some respect, we are sort of in the front end of that by having taken some of these steps. And encouraging developers to look at trees as a positive thing, it allows them to then advertise to other communities that they're taking care of trees in their developments. And you're right, having this inventory allows us to do that in a logical and a more organized manner. We identify species, we identify their size, their health, and so we're going through great lengths to protect our tree canopy.
Well, we're happy to partner with your developers to help them with their inventories and the ongoing care. In 2 years, a lot of bad things can happen to a tree. So, you know, they would benefit from having a certified arborist out to look at them and do some periodic checks on those trees to make sure that they're taking care of them the right way so that they don't become penalized for those later.
Right. No, absolutely. I think most of the developers that we're starting to see, approaching the town of Argyle, recognize that and are willing to work with that, with us on that. Also looking at, for example, some of the residential developments. There have been a few mistakes made in the past. The street trees, for example, that you see, kind of in between a sidewalk and a street, are probably not the best choice. Either it's going to damage the road, the sidewalk, or at the minimum, it's going to be stymied by the amount of growth that it can have in a small area. And so relaxing that and being a little bit more cognizant that a tree would be better off in a yard as opposed to on the street. One, it could actually save the developer some money, but also it's going to provide a better tree in the long run.
Sure. So Ron, it's been great having you here. Appreciate your time. It's been real interesting learning about how the town of Argyle and developers and arborists can all work together toward the same goal.
Well, thank you for having me. I think we're blessed with the fact that you're so close to our town, that you're part of our community, and particularly that you're taking a special interest in Argyle and allow us to maybe lead in preserving our trees that other communities can look up to one of these days.
Great. I look forward to doing this again.
Thank you.